So this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And one of the reasons why, oh, I guess I'll give you a little background. So I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I've been working with couples and individuals for 12 years now. And I love this work because it legitimately has the influence, it has the power to change your life. And so for you all who are here, I think Austin does such a great job with his content, him leading this community and the group to help people ultimately achieve what they're here to achieve, which is a better version of themselves. So it's a privilege to be here. So I thank you guys. So I want to talk to you guys tonight about relationship repair, and I love questions. So if you have any questions, I want to make sure that what I talk about tonight is actionable. It's not just a bunch of principles, but I want to give you examples. I want to share with you how to do this. And if you have questions about how to apply this to your relationship, then I would love to support you. I'm happy to do any like hot seat coaching or anything. Really, I want to make sure this is helpful for you guys. So this is one thing that I feel like most people want, but just don't know how to do. So many, and I'm going to use just for the sake of shortening it, husband and wife. But whether you're married or not, it's all the same. But just shortcut, I would just say husband and wife. So many husbands want this. They want to have a strong relationship with trust, but they just don't know how to get there. And the problem is their wife doesn't believe what they say, even though they know in their heart they're doing better. Or if they tell their wife, hey, it's been 2 weeks and there's been like, I'm in a good spot, or it's been a month or 3 months or however long, if they know like I'm in a good spot, but she doesn't believe you, it's super discouraging. So husbands are just sometimes not sure what to do or how to do it in order to rebuild trust, repair the relationship, how to calm the fights down, how to work through her anger. So I want to give you some examples of how to do that tonight and share with you some principles that then you can apply that like it's crazy how fast relationships can turn around when you apply these specific things that I want to share with you tonight. So trust is rebuilt when there's under two conditions. Number one, when she understands why and how this problem happened. So if you've struggled with pornography or messaging people or all the way up to prostitution or beyond, whatever the behavior is, she has to understand why it's happened. And how did you guys end up here? Because if she doesn't have a very clear idea of what led here, it's so hard for her to let her wall down because the fear is, well, if you don't know what happened and I don't know what happened, how do I know it's not going to happen again? And if they're in this state of I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Anytime I feel like we're making progress, I get hit with the next thing. And if you're not sure what happened, this would be your ideal first step is to really spend some time mapping this out so that then you can have that conversation with her. Because in her mind, so many women that I work with, in their mind, they're not good enough. Well, my husband watches all this stuff. His attention goes outside of the relationship, ultimately because I'm not enough. I've never met I literally have not worked with one husband who has told me that they turned to pornography because their wife's not good enough. Like, never have I had that happen I've done probably 15,000 hours of therapy. I've never heard that once. But a wife, 99% of the time, that's how they take it, at least in the beginning. I'm not enough. Uh, he prefers somebody else. He doesn't really love me. But that's just not true. That's how the husbands feel. And if you think about your own situation, if you've struggled with pornography and your wife's thinking, well, why are you doing this? Why won't you just turn to me? The husband is like, but I do love you. I do care about you. I just struggle with this thing here. And it's not about you. But it's so hard for them to make sense of that. So that's step number one is you got to understand why and how it's happened. Number two, trust is rebuilt when there's emotional safety. So we use this, I don't know, I use this word safety a lot. It's not so much, well, yes, I guess the physical side of it is like kind of goes without saying, but emotional safety is when she can let her guard down, when she feels comfortable enough to let her guard down, that's when trust can be rebuilt. So how do you create that? So if you're not sure how and why it's happened, yeah, that's really good stuff to process here on the calls, maybe. I don't know if that's the stuff that kind of stuff that you guys talk about, or Austin, if this is like as you guys share, you get ideas of like, oh, that resonates, and maybe that's a part of it. But doing the work to figure that out is key. Number two, which is what I want to spend time on tonight, is how do you create safety? So safety is created when two things. She can see you differently, right? She sees you showing up differently, being a different person, interacting with her differently, being more present at home, being responsive to her needs. When she sees you as a different person, that's a big element. The next element is knowing that her pain matters to you. So often what happens is when conversations don't go well, actually, let me fast forward to that real quick. Okay, I guess I just said I shared that. So often this is what happens. When conversations don't go well, here's this little imagine like a little infinity sign. So when she doesn't feel heard, if she brings up her pain to you and you get defensive, or you ignore it, or you avoid it, or minimize it, then her sadness comes out as anger. And when you see her anger, typically a lot of guys, it's again, imagine mapping this out as a figure eight. Her anger lands right on this part of you that hurts, right? She's always mad. Nothing that I do is good enough. Or shame comes up, right? She's so angry. I think about all the stuff that I've done. How could I have done this? What's wrong with me? And you get hard on yourself. So this part of her that she's hurting, it comes out as anger. It affects you because it feels awful, of course, to be fighting. And then in that place of pain, it's very easy to defend or explain or minimize or do any of those things that I mentioned. The more you do that, the more it reinforces to her, yep, he doesn't care. Yep, I brought up my pain and he turned away. Obviously, I don't matter to him because if I did, he wouldn't be upset with me. If I did, he wouldn't defend himself. And then she gets more angry. So this just continues the loop for so many people. And this is what undermines the trust in the relationship because without her feeling like she matters to you, it's so easy to get stuck in this cycle. She's just getting mad or she gets quiet and avoids, and you guys keep missing each other. So I wanted to share with you a quick story. This is probably the most dramatic, maybe is not the right word, but the transformation, I've never seen a transformation from so low to so high in such a short amount of time. I wanted to share with you what this particular couple did, which is along the lines of what we're talking about. There's a couple that I'm working with, and the husband had, it just came out like 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, that he had been having affairs with prostitutes for the entire 20-year duration of their marriage. And the number was 17 people that he had been with. The wife had no idea. She could tell something was wrong. She never really felt loved by him. He was never really present. He was just absorbed in his phone, doing his own thing, wasn't really, didn't interact with her. She felt neglected and ignored. And then all this stuff comes out, and she's like, well, there's why. Now it all makes sense. And of course, it just shatters their whole relationship. And it doesn't, by the way, it doesn't have to be so escalated right now, right, as far as what I'm describing here. I wanted to use this story just to demonstrate that it's 100% possible for relationships to turn around despite how far things might have escalated. A woman feels the same feelings, whether it's prostitution, right, physical acting out, or something that is not physical, whether it's pornography or, messaging somebody. A wife feels the same feelings. So for her, it shatters her world, and she's thinking, I can't stay with this person anymore. I don't know who he is. I can never trust him again. And I just don't really want to do this anymore. But there was a small part of her that thought, but I do care about him, and I want to be in a relationship with him if it's possible. So when we started working together, the goal was to help him create safety. This is why I wanted to bring this couple up. He has done an unbelievable job, like a remarkable job in providing her emotional safety and helping her feel loved despite all of what's happened. And they're religious, and so they said that God changed him, and she can. And again, think about this only being 6 weeks, right? That's not long at all. But she said, this is not the same person. He's attentive. He checks on me. He has conversations with me. He holds me when I'm crying. He's there for me when I'm mad. He responds to me so differently than than he had been for our whole marriage. And him doing these things that we're talking about today, creating safety, rebuilding trust by helping her feel loved, it's unbelievable where they are right now. And I want to have them on my podcast soon. Well, I guess so. I work with people in a 12-week format, so they're about halfway through. So when they finish, I hope that they're willing to, because it's just inspiring to hear their story and specifically what helped. How did they get there? So the short answer, how they got there, was he took care of, if I were to boil it down to one thing, he was present and acknowledged and validated and cared for her pain. So when a husband does that, and has conversations with his wife and helps her feel loved and compassion and empathy when she's sad, that is the magic key that turns relationships around. And so the reason why this matters so much is because she can't believe what you're saying, unfortunately. Even if you're in a really good place, it's almost impossible for her to take that in. The good news is that we don't need her to believe you in terms of your words. The thing that makes the biggest difference is how she feels around you. So if you can express compassion and empathy and care for her pain, that is the biggest. If I were to give you the magic, if there ever was a magic bullet, which there's not, but if there was, it would be this. It's empathy, compassion, and care for her pain instead of this dynamic here, which is tough, right? This is common and it's kind of hard to get out of sometimes. But instead of this dynamic where she's mad, then you protect, it's like fight or flight, right? Fight is the anger, flight is the defend and avoid. Couples just miss there and they can stay stuck for years, but it doesn't have to be like that. Again, that's why I wanted to share this story. In 6 weeks, they're literally like their whole world is different. And so we don't need her to believe you. All we want is for you to create a place where she can feel differently in your presence. Okay, I want to spend the last 5 minutes here, and then I'm happy to answer questions. How do you do this now? So here are the steps. How do you create safety? Acknowledging your pain is so critical, and this is like a recurring, repetitive, consistent thing, right? It's not a 1, 2, 5 conversation thing. It's continually being there because she's going to have hard days. Even in good moments, when you're out having a nice time, you're at a nice dinner, triggers happen out of nowhere. And a husband can think, what just happened? We were just smiling and laughing, and now you're crying, and now you're mad. Like, how did we get here? And then they get discouraged and think, well, no matter what I do, we're never going to get out from underneath this. No matter what I do, no matter how good I am, no matter how much I care and show her that I'm different, we're ending up right back here again. So they get discouraged. It's so important to recognize, husband, for all of you guys who are listening to this, that's a part of the process. That is baked in, meaning you will have good days, you will have good moments, and just as surely as the good moments are there, the bad ones are going to come, and she's going to go back to her pain. And that's okay if you know what to do, right? If you know what to do, it doesn't feel so alarming. So this is what to do. So step number 1 is to acknowledge, right? And I wanted to give you some verbiage, and you can make this your own, but this is the idea, right? I can see it's just acknowledging. I can see why you feel so hurt by what I've done. It was selfish for me to turn outside of our marriage, and it made you feel like you don't matter. You're not trying to minimize it. You're not trying to say, it was just pornography or it just happened a couple of times. It's surefire recipe for missing. But if you can acknowledge, I see that you're hurting, it makes sense why, and I made these choices that caused you pain. Once you do that, then you can validate. I see the hurt that you're in, and I recognize that I caused this. I feel so much remorse because of the fact that you're struggling. You're carrying this pain all the time, and it kills me knowing that you have to carry this because of what I've done. This isn't okay. You don't deserve this, right? It's you're validating her experience and helping her know that it makes sense to you and that you feel this remorse and care for her because she's struggling. And then third is expressing your commitment. I'm going to make sure I do everything everything I can to completely resolve this issue so you don't have to continue to struggle and be hurt by all of this. I want nothing more than for you to know that I care. And my actions didn't demonstrate that. But I realized why this has happened. I'm taking specific steps to resolve the underlying reasons because I never want to end up back here again. I care so much for you. And like I said, my actions didn't reflect this. But this is my primary goal, is to make sure that you know that I'm here for you. So you can make these your own, but this is the idea. So the couple that I was referring to, again, like they describe it as a miracle. His heart had changed. So now he checks in with her regularly. He asks her how she's doing regularly. Anytime she's having a hard time, he's right there and he drops what he's doing to tend to her. And he just repeats this stuff, right? You don't have to memorize 1,000 things, right? Relationships don't require you to do a million things. It's just getting good at 1 or 2 core things that move the needle the most, which are these elements right here, right? It's acknowledging her pain, validating, and then expressing the commitment. And when you do this on repeat, it's crazy how fast it works. Think about it, like for those of you who have kids, I've got an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so if my 4-year-old falls down and I'm like, it's okay, bud, get up. You're okay. You're okay. Just stand up. Guess what he does? If anybody of you any of you has kids, they just stand there and cry, right? They cry, they cry, they cry. As opposed to if I were to pick him up, and even if it was some small little thing, right? It's like I pick him up and like, oh, bud, that looks like it hurt really bad. Are you okay? Where did it hurt? And he points to his arm like, oh, like that's got to be so painful. And I rub and I'm sorry, bud. This is hard. 30 seconds later, he's laughing and smiling and off, right? He's playing. Pain just needs to be acknowledged. And when it is, it doesn't take long for us to recenter. The reason why a wife gets so angry and feels so triggered all the time is because there's so much pain underneath the surface that's not getting the attention that it needs. And when you guys get good at this process here and having conversations with her, checking in with her, making sure that she knows that her pain matters, it's wild how fast things can turn around. So lastly, how do you apply this? You can do this in two ways. When she brings up her pain, you plug right into this framework, right? Acknowledging, validating, and then reinforcing your commitment to the process and to her. And number two, which is just as or maybe more powerful than number one, is when you initiate these conversations. Most men never do. And I don't blame them, no judgment. I understand why they don't, because usually when they do, it brings up all the hurt, and then she's mad, and then they freeze and don't know what to say. So it makes sense why they would want to avoid that. So the idea, though, is when you know what to do, it won't feel so scary. So this is my encouragement, and then I'd love to answer if there's any questions. I'd love to answer any questions to make sure this is applicable for you guys. And you can share with me your situations, and I'll give you feedback as much as I can. But the idea is, so this is my encouragement for all of you in terms of an action item. If this week you plan on doing this at least once, but ideally a couple times, few times, out of nowhere, and you guys aren't even talking about any of this stuff, you initiate a conversation with her and you say, honey, I know that you're probably thinking about this stuff all the time. Even though you might not be bringing it up all the time, I'm sure that you're always thinking about it. I just want you to know that I'm aware of you and that I'm aware of that. And I just wanted to check in with you. How are you doing right now? Because I know this is tough. And I just feel bad that we're even here and then we have to even have this talk. But I want you to know that I'm thinking about you. How are you? Is there anything you want to talk about right now? If you do that, it's like it's one of those simple but not easy, right? It's very, very simple. But the not easy part is that it's scary, right? It's like that conversation could be, it could go anywhere. But if you know all I need to do is remind her that I care, empathize with her, and express compassion, you can navigate 90 out of 100 of those conversations. They'll go very, very differently. And so, okay, so that's my action item is to test this week. If you guys have the courage to do this, because I know it's tough, but you can use those words if you want to. Honey, I know you're probably thinking about this all the time. I just want you to know that I'm aware of you and I'm aware of that. I wanted to just check with you to see if there's anything you want to talk about. This has got to be so hard for you, but I just want you to know that like I really do care. Is there anything you need to talk about? If you do that and you do that consistently, I can almost guarantee you with like 99% certainty your relationship will turn a corner. And when it does, you just keep doing the same thing, right? The idea is, again, you don't have to memorize 100 things. It's just getting good at like one or two core things, which is creating safety, helping her know that she matters, and that builds trust because she'll feel different with you. Last thought that I have is that this here can go further than you just being in a really good place individually without this. Because I've worked with guys who are, they don't even struggle with pornography anymore. They're in a totally different place individually, but their relationship is a mess because they don't do this. It doesn't matter how good you are individually. if she can't feel differently in your interactions with her, safety can't be created. It doesn't hinge on you. You're a part of it, of course, but integrating her into this is ultimately how you guys can move the needle and really turn a corner in your relationship. So, with that all being said, let me take away the screen share here. Is there any questions that anybody has?